You can't keep me cooped up in here, okay? I am a peacock. You gotta let me fly.
Hello there, and welcome to the Poppycock Podcast, where the topics don't matter, and I'm not an expert. Today, I want to start you off with a nice little fun fact. In 1917, after the death of Mark Twain, two acclaimed mediums said that Mark Twain had reached out to them through the Hasbro Ouija board and given them a novel that he wanted to publish from beyond the grave, 7 years after his death. So they publish it under Mark Twain's name. And as any book written by a con artist is, it was awful. It was so bad, in fact, that Mark Twain's family estate sued these two, again, self-acclaimed psychics or mediums for defamation of Mark Twain's character and his family name. So, if you're not smart enough to come up with a better con than, the ghost wrote my story, I don't know why you think you're creative enough to write a good book. I don't know. I'm just saying, if I was going to con people who had lost someone, I'd be better at it. Anyway, let's hop in to the topics. It's going to be loosely connected here, but I think by the end of it, you'll see how the grand picture all connects. So, Predator Hunting Grounds just released its DLC. Some of it was given to, special prize winners, so not all of it's available to everyone who has the game. But, it's worth discussing because of the implications and what I think it's going to say about movie franchises. So now, the iconic character of Dutch has been added as a playable character to fight the Predator. And what's even better is, unlike Mortal Kombat, they actually got Arnold to voice his character. Probably because it's been stated this is one of his favorite characters, and it's arguably one that he's not run into the ground like he has with the Terminator. So I can understand why he'd be like, yeah, I'll come, I'll record everything, I'll do a one-and-done shot. Maybe you can contract me for more DLC if you add, the rest of the cast of the original Predator movie. What have you. Pay me money. All I'm doing is sitting around in quarantine, making ridiculous Instagram videos with my miniature donkey, which is, the weirdest Dr. Dolittle movie. I mean, not the weirdest. Robert Downey Jr. somehow made that crap heap. Anyway, what's important is the fact that the way Dutch shows up, because obviously it's been some time since the original Predator movie. So, in case you haven't paid attention, Arnold Schwarzenegger no longer looks the way he did in the original Predator. He can't do the things he did in the original Predator, where he's hip-firing automatic weapons and throwing a knife so hard that it pins a man to a wall as he dies. They have an explanation for this. After the whole jungle incident, he tries to escape. He's like, look, this is bad news. The government's going to try and hide this from everyone, which means they're going to kill me. So he goes on the run. But a secret organization that's been formed to hunt aliens and predators catches him and says, look, we want you to be on our super secret alien kill squad. So they give him a team, and over the years, they become an incredibly effective murder machine. They're knocking out monsters left and right, like a cooler Men in Black movie. Then one day, they come up against a female predator, and that female predator takes out everyone in Dutch's squad except for him, and it leaves him with a gnarly net gun scar, which you can see in the game on both his arm and on his face. It makes him look pretty rad, if I'm being honest. I mean, I don't have to feel bad about the suffering because, he's a fictional character, and he didn't really hurt himself. However, you might also notice if you're looking at it that he doesn't look like modern-day Arnold, but he doesn't look like classic Dutch either. That's because in universe, he was so badly injured after fighting this predator that the secret organization gets him, takes him to their secret base, injects him with secret alien technology, and it, on top of, stabilizing his health, it also slows his aging, meaning that he's caught somewhere around the age of 30 physically, and that's why he can fight that way. But, he still looks a little bit older. He's got, the gray hair and the beard, so he looks enough like modern Arnold that you understand that time has passed. But at the same time, modern-day Arnold Schwarzenegger could not run around in the jungle without throwing out his hip or busting a knee or his heart giving out, which is not a knock against him. I think he's in great shape for the age that he's at. I just, I'm being realistic here. And, look, age happens to all of us. I think it's an interesting thing, though, that we're getting a continuation of Dutch's story in a way that's really cool. It keeps us from having to admit that our favorite action hero icons are aging, because you can take their modern day voice, you can get the real actor, you can get them back in a studio for a couple days and have them record your script. Then you can create a 3D rendering of them in their prime. Whatever era you want, you can just get the right artists and the right amount of time, and you can recreate their physique. And then they never have to age out of being an action star. And even if they do get old, you can do it like comic books, where age just means that you get bulkier and bulkier and you get a huge chin, you know? So you just look cooler and cooler in your own way. Because in real life, people like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're getting older. They're not able to do as much physically. Time is taking its toll, as it does to all of us, and eventually it will take its final claim and they will be no more. However, in the world of video games, up until the moment they step foot in that grave, they can look like they're still in their prime. And it makes you wonder if video games are actually the best medium to continue on classic movie franchises. Because another property that's done this now is Mortal Kombat. They brought the original RoboCop voice, the original actor, they put him in their video game, and they've recreated it. And he's running around, he's doing, Mortal Kombat-y things. He's doing combat with mortals. This is a really cool way to carry on the character because, Peter Wheeler couldn't do all of those action movie things anymore. He's old. He's, like the same way Ed Harris is cool in Westworld. He's scary, but we're aware that he's an old dude, and, realistically, a young dude is going to be stronger than him, even if they work out the same amount. That's just, even if genetics are on your side, age is not. But in the world of video games, it's like a Build-A-Bear workshop for well-oiled, greasy action heroes, where you can get the biggest pecs, the greatest triceps, the most incredible lats, and then you just sort of age their face up a little bit so they look closer to their modern-day equivalent, and then you get their original person to voice act them until they die, and you can have them in their prime almost indefinitely. Look at the modern RoboCop. Yes, that was mostly studio intervention, keeping the director from being able to go rated R, but it didn't go as well as, they would have hoped for. If you look at the new Predator movies, they're not doing so hot either, and the idea of bringing Dutch back has been kicked around since, I think, around 2010, 2013, whenever Predators came out, starring Adrian Brody. And at this point, yeah, with Hollywood magic, you could still make Arnold look tough. He looked great in the most recent Terminator movie, and that was like a year ago. But imagine if he could stay buff forever, and you could just say, hey, alien science. The dude is hunting aliens. Why can't you just use alien science as your excuse to make him, fight and move like he's still in his 30s while looking slightly older? It's sort of like a Captain Americanism, Because no matter how old Captain America got in comic books, he could still fight because super soldier serum and blah, 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 made up pseudoscience. And if real science is getting cool enough, why can't we say that alien science is way ahead of us? I don't know. I think it's a really cool concept that we can explore because they're bringing Dutch back in a way that doesn't make him sad and lame. Because there was a period in 2012 to maybe 2015-ish where there was just a lot of movies with classic action heroes, and the whole movie premise was the action hero you like, but this time they're old. You had your Bruce Willis, you had Sly, you had Arnold, you had the whole run-of-the-mill. I think by the end of the third Expendables, it was all oh, I'm so old, but I'm so strong and virile for these young women. It was just like watching your grandpa hit on people. It was kind of gross. But in a world of digital media where their bodies don't have to age, hey, suddenly that character can be immortal. Suddenly, Rambo is forever as insanely buff and shredded as he was in Rambo 3. One of the least compelling Rambos, but one of the coolest body shapes you can ever see Sylvester Stallone in. It means that the Terminator doesn't have to age anymore. The Terminator can just look like he did in the 90s. It means that Dutch can look like he did or how he does now in an idealized version of what if when you got older, you just got buff and you got scars and a beard, because that's that's like cartoon and comic book logic. It's just age just gives you scars and cool facial hair and a tattoo maybe. And if you're in the sci-fi world, a bionic body part, which kind of already happened in a Predator comic book or video game the Sega made. So, look, already treading down that direction. But it kind of makes you wonder. And exploring further into the Predator universe, it's in a kind of cool nod. Ilphonic, who is the developer of the game, has gone and the original Predator design was based around Jean-Claude Van Damme in a suit that kind of looked like a beetle dog that was standing on its hind legs. It was very weird. It looked like someone had seen a Bionicle during like a fever dream, and then when they woke up, they tried to make it out of fleshy bits instead. It was very, very weird. Very different than what Stan Winston gave us with the iconic design of a crab-faced alien and stripper fishnets, you know. As weird as it sounds, it's iconic. And they're adding that alien back into the universe of the Predator, saying that the reason that predators basically hunt each other, the reason they care about honor, the reason they're basically a warrior-centric civilization, despite their advanced technology, where you would assume they would have to sort of, as a society, move beyond being so obsessed with war and death, is because this other species that's based on Jean-Claude Van Damme's unused and only partially really filmed weird alien bodysuit, that those were the species that enslaved the predators way back in the day, made them fight in like gladiatorial arenas, used them for sport, and then the predators were like, hey, we're way better at killing than you are, so we're just going to kill you guys. And now they have like masks and helmets that are basically made out of the remnants of those things. So you get like a all albino looking predator running around, which is already kind of a cool design that I've only maybe seen once or twice. And I can never tell at this point if it's official art or if it's just fan art, because we have really talented fans in the universe, you know? They're going to be good. And realistically, a franchise going on since the 80s is going to have some bad artwork, so it could go either way. And it's already a cool design, and then they have a mask and armor and all these weapons that are designed and based on the unused Jean-Claude Van Damme Predator design. And that is just like a really neat way to not only flesh out this fictional universe, to not only add in a new class and a new character for gameplay reasons, which is cool, but it just... Everyone who knows that, and most, you know, hardcore action movie and sci-fi fans are at least mildly aware that it was originally a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. And they know that the original design didn't work and that Jean-Claude wasn't as big as Arnold was. So, you know, it's kind of cool to see these unused ideas being brought back. The same way that a lot of the designs used in the sequel Star Wars movies were actually based on unused concept art that were done for the original trilogy. Except in this case, you're not really... I don't know, it's different because with Star Wars, you know, you're telling a story that looks like it's, you know, been the hero's journey, you know, Luke and or Anakin doing their thing, and then the Emperor is gone, and then you're sort of resetting it and almost doing another interpretation of that. This is more like a continuation in a new direction because you have the Predators. However, it does kind of make things confusing because they're using all these different names, and it's a bit odd because in Predators we see, I believe they're called Bad Bloods, which are predators that are bigger and scarier than the original Predator species, and I think they're like a hybrid mixed with something else, or maybe they're like a silverback gorilla versus a regular gorilla, like they're just slightly bigger. I don't know, because, you know, I was a teenager and I saw the movie, I was like, that's rad, and then I went to bed. I didn't really think about it that much. So you have that, and then you have the Predator that's like a super predator from The Predator, the most recent film, where it has homogenized DNA from all these different aliens that have put up good fights to make itself this sort of apex predator, which is, weirdly enough, not the name they went with it, which is annoying. And then they have this one, which I believe is being called the Alpha Predator. Again, apex predator sounds cooler, but hey, that's not my job. And you have this creature, and they all have very similar names, and they all kind of look the same, because at the end of the day, they are wearing basically just masks and claws and maybe a cape. So it's a little difficult to keep them all separate, but you can't make it too different without being too divergent from the franchise. It's just, I feel like it's been like 3 different interpretations of the same idea of like, what if there was a scarier version of a predator? And I think this would be a lot cooler if like the Predator, and maybe even Predators hadn't gone that route. If Predators had just been like, this is just like another species, the same way that within like Labradors, there's, Black Lab, there's a Chocolate Lab, there's different things. You got all these different divergent dog breeds, essentially. What if there were different breeds within the Predators, or different races? What if it's the equivalent to like an Asian dude? And, instead of the stereotype that he's incredibly gifted at technology and math and a little bit worse at driving, he's like 3 feet taller and he has a different shaped skull. Which, now that I'm saying that out loud, that does still sound slightly racist. But as far as aliens that are fictional concerned, I don't think I can be racist towards them. And I'm literally only describing them based on the key differences that we can tell from movies. It's not a culture I can go visit and learn more about, I mean, I could get high and imagine that I did, but I don't have the time or the money or that's just not for me. But I think all of this begs a bigger question of, with aging franchises, with aging heroes, maybe the answer isn't rebooting or doing a sequel to, because reboots only work if it's something that needs to be updated for an audience, because so much time has passed that parts of the premise and key plot points would no longer make sense. Things like from the 70s and 80s, that could be an update just based on the fact that there's modern technology that adds new twists. People can call for help in a horror movie situation. There's all these different things. But ideally, you're really only updating and rebooting something whenever it failed the first time. I mean, you reboot, your computer or your phone or your video game system whenever it has an issue, not whenever it's just working just fine and you haven't turned it off for a while. So stop rebooting things that worked in the first place. I think the TV show Psych made a really good point about it, because they did basically a reboot of one of their earliest episodes. And in that episode, they have a line jokingly saying that you should only really reboot things that sucked the first time or could have been better, not something that you're just trying to recreate, because you're never going to perfectly recreate that. And then in the case of making a sequel, you can make creative sequels and you can take the story in new directions. But at this point in time, if you want to make another Rambo movie, I'm going to have a very hard time believing Sylvester Stallone can even stay awake as long as a runtime for a standard movie now. He's at that grandpa napping age, still buff, still sharp as a tack, still scary enough to beat me up. But if I can hide from him for more than 45 minutes and it's a warm day, I can wait for him to fall asleep and then I can leave. Arnold, again, he seems like he's getting shorter, like that old guy shrinkage that happens. I can't tell if it's because he has consistent girth of his like meaty shoulders weighing him down at all times, and his spine just can't handle hoisting that, insane amount of muscle up anymore, and it's just crunching him. But I don't want to see him turn into the most, roided out Mr. Magoo, Danny DeVito lookalike in the world. That's not an action. Well, okay, I take it back. That is an action movie I would watch, and it would be interesting, sequel to Twins, where Danny DeVito gets better looking and Arnold just gets uglier, So there's a premise. Man, I just gave Hollywood another idea and they're going to butcher it. What is wrong with me? The point is, I don't want to see a Predator movie 5 years from now where Arnold needs to be pushed around in a wheelchair. Harrison Ford can barely do his own stunts anymore, and he's still like, I don't want to go make another Indiana Jones movie. It's going to be a good one this time. No Shia LaBeouf. That's fine, man, but you should have made that 10 years ago when your knees and back hadn't been snapped like 3 times. I mean, the dude was almost in a plane accident like 2 weeks ago because he misheard the tower saying, don't go, wait. And he was like, okay, I'm going forward now. And a plane was trying to land, and it almost completely landed on top of his little plane and crushed him. I mean, these guys are getting to an age where it's just not safe for them to even be in action movies, like even pretending. It's not great. Harrison Ford is basically falling asleep in the middle of his movies already. Somehow, Anthony Hopkins, who was never an action star, but he has like, if you watch Westworld, he has not lost a step. He's still just like, he's there to act, he's there to deliver lines, and he's there to be compelling as hell. Don't know how he does that. Patrick Stewart, again, aging, compelling. But you can tell he's getting older, and it just makes me sad. It makes me want to hug him, because he's like the world's grandpa, and I just want him to know that we love him before he leaves. I'm not emotionally prepared for that. But in the world of action-based heroes, less thespian heavy and more, gym heavy, muscular heavy, physically heavy. I don't want to watch them degrade in front of my eyes. I don't want to watch a series of movies and it be like a reverse evolution of man where you watch someone slowly walk themselves into the grave. And these are action dudes who know how to get big old school style, which means going to the gym until your arms break and then using steroids to get the rest of the way. Like, they were there when it was all like opioids, cocaine, and steroids. They didn't have all these cool, like, Chris Hemsworth wasn't giving out a free trial of his workout app. It was just, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to go do push-ups, I'm going to do the weights, and it's going to be good. That was the worst Arnold I've ever done in my life. Still better than the one in Mortal Kombat, though. Ed Boon, the hell was up with that? Arnold officially said he didn't want to be part of a violent video game. Let's be real, he didn't want to have to record extra lines for extra DLC in the future, because who knew we were going to be stuck in a lockdown a few months later? But he's coming back to the Predator. Don't get me started. In the world of video games, you can digitally recreate and capture your action hero icons in full glory forever. And then 20 years from now, when video games have excelled to an insane way, publishers will buy the rights to those games and they will do an HD remaster to whatever version of video games are in the future, where it's an augmented reality or they beam information into your skull or whatever. You can endlessly remaster video games, and you can pretty much go back and replay games all the way back to the dawn of the video game console at this point. So in the future, even if some publisher is like, nah, I don't want your RoboCop v Terminator v Predator v Blade Runner video game, which would be stupid because that's awesome, you can still go back onto Steam or whatever, because backwards compatibility is a big thing, even for consoles now. You can just pop it in, and you can see Dutch in his prime again. You can see Sylvester Stallone in his prime again. Don't get me wrong, Demolition Man 2 is coming, and it's got Sylvester Stallone, hopefully also as Wesley Snipes. How does he kill him in that movie? Or do they just freeze him again? I have not watched that in a while. I need to go back and rewatch that, because if they can make an excuse for Wesley Snipes to be back and like reprogrammed to be like a buddy cop thing, and then they're stuck being buddy cops, and he's like, I don't trust him. He's a bad guy. Remember, Simon Says, bad dude. And he'll be like, like when they reprogrammed John Spartan in the first place, and he was like, why do I like knitting all of a sudden? What if they make him act like the nicest, dude in the world? He's basically like Martha Stewart pre-prison. That would be hilarious. We're just a super polite guy kung-fuing his way through, apologizing for how great he is at kicking your butt. And then Sylvester like, I still don't trust you. And then Demolition Man 2 is a buddy cop movie where they're chasing a scarier dude. Throw in a Dave Bautista. Boom. That's your movie. You're welcome, Sly. I just wrote your script. I know they already have one, but, if they realize it's a bad one, they can fall back to this. I know Sly's a big fan of the podcast, so what's up? What's up, big man? Just saying, it's a pretty wild world that we live in, where if tomorrow I became an action icon and I got shredded, I could be eternally preserved as a video game character, and then I could immediately go back to being my very mediocre self with aching knees and spinal problems, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. I could have kids be like, hey, kids, I was buff, right? Like, yeah, right, these pictures aren't very convincing. It's like, well, play this video game with me. That was a scan of my sick biceps over there. When I would flex, God would weep, It's just, that's the future, man. So, who's to say? I think that we're going to be pretty shocked to see how media shifts in the next few years. And with what Elphonic has done with the Predator franchise, I think is one of the most intelligent ways that you can continue on a pre-existing world and make it something really cool. Make it something that can grow and expand, and you can throw in new people. That being said, in a previous podcast episode, I did outline the best way to make a Predator movie. Set it in like a Soviet location or like a wooded forest somewhere that's more along the lines of Alaska or Canada or something like that, where the trees are clearly not jungle. Just to make it different enough that you can destroy things and not feel guilty. And then, I'm not going to go into it because it's a pre-existing episode. If you want to know, I straight up went down and I looked at the algorithm of what makes the good Predators good and what changes in the bad ones. and I distilled that down into the algorithm to make a Predator movie that's good, and then I made a highly suggestive take on what people should do, because all the Hollywood people listening to this podcast, if they want to make tons of money again and make consumers believe that their movies are actually worth however much it'll cost to go see a movie. That being said, we've all been cooped up inside for the lockdown so long, you could pretty much say that Hannah Montana is getting a gritty reboot, and I'd go watch it. I'm desperate to just go out and be civilized again, and how the hell did I get onto that? Anyway, this has been the Poppycock Podcast. I hope you had a blast. All you people who like Predator out there, all the people who don't, and if you didn't agree with what I said, but you stayed through all this, that is a mark of a very intelligent and emotionally well-adjusted person. Hats off to you, sir, madam, or lizard person. It shows great emotional maturity and growth, and you should be quite proud of yourself. Again, I hope you've had a great day, and I hope this podcast made it just a little bit better.